Hey, Fred, episode 800. Who'd have thought it when you got to 799 that you could do one more, my friend? I think you have another 800 in you. It's Joe Hallett from joehallettgolf.com. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast with you, as well as listening to the podcast and knowing how golfers and instructors are getting better all through your hard work. My friend, congratulations. It's a milestone. It's just one step to 1600. Good luck, and thanks for all you're doing for this game.
This anniversary episode of Golf Smarter is brought to you by dynamicgolfers.com.
Golf Smarter, number 800. Happy birthday to you.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Greene.
Yay!
Thank you, my little precious girl. This is usually where I bring in a guest to say, welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast. But we're switching chairs today, and since I'm going to be the featured guest on episode 800, here's our special guest host, golf professional and our own Yoda of Yips, my friend, Jim Waldron.
So welcome to episode 800, Fred.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
How does it feel to have the shoe on the other foot?
I'll tell you at the end of the episode. I know that when I'm doing these interviews and the pro asks me, well, tell me, and asks me a question, I'm like, I don't know. I'm freezing up. I don't like to be asked questions. I like to ask them. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes today.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, we'll do the best we can. So my first question on my sort of impromptu in my head list is, why did you start the podcast in the first place? What was your sort of both short-term and long-term goal way back in 2005, I think it was, right?
Yeah, I started the end of 2005. So I had just come off of, and I guess we can talk about this later, but I had this 20-year stretch of being, almost 20 years at that point, of having my own business in sports marketing. And that had come to its logical conclusion after spending, well, we'll talk about that again. We'll talk about that later, I guess, of what my career was like. And so I was trying to come up with a new idea, and I had just started playing golf a couple years before this. And so I had this idea, whenever I go out and play golf and I ask somebody, what's my target? They say, oh, just hit your 3-wood here, or hit your driver, or hit your 5-iron here. And I'm like, no. What's my target? What am I trying to get to? Because you and I'm sure, do not hit our clubs the same length. So I had this idea of doing customized videos for golf courses on how to play the course. A shot-by-shot guide hosted by the head pro or the course designer on, it's like, okay, we're standing on the first tee and your target is just to the left of the bunker there, or just short of the left, the bunker on the right side, because you don't want to go in, so you want to stay short, and it's 225 yards, so hit your 200-yard club here. And then he would take a swing and you wouldn't see the ball in flight, because this was before drones, and this was, didn't have a budget for lots of cameras on the golf course. And then we had, then the next shot would be, they're standing on the green. It says, okay, now this, where you're standing on the fairway, it's like, okay, if your ball landed here, your next shot is to the green, and this green, goes from, slopes from front to back, and and if it's in the middle of you want to stay on the left because of front to back, but with a little slide. So he's describing what it is. And I came up with the idea of doing these videos for golf courses, and I was going to call it T-Tour, T-E-E-T-O-U-R, T-Tour.
Yeah.
And there was a course here in Northern California called Wente Vineyards, and we got them to agree to do a demo. So we shot a demo, and this was before the iPod had video on it.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was like 2004 or something. And we created logos, we did packaging, And we wanted to do a demo and then put it in the pro shop at Wente Vineyards to see how it went. And I started calling golf courses around the country to do this. And thought, you know what? If I can get something like a Troon Golf to buy once and then I have access to all their courses, that would be great. But again, this was before video was readily available. So I was going to create DVDs and have portable DVD players to rent to be on your golf cart. There was a lot of logistics that were still in the way that we hadn't developed
way
yet.
ahead of its time, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how it morphed. So how did the podcast morph into that? That's interesting.
So then podcasting started, and I came from a radio background. I grew up wanting to be in radio. And so the idea of doing this was not getting a lot of traction. Golf courses weren't really interested unless they were, I quickly learned that golf courses had a budget for marketing until the course opened, like when they're developing a new course. Sure. And once the course was opened, then it was all about water and maintenance of the golf course that their budgets went into. Of course. And it was an idea which I'd had some luck with in the past, of an idea that trying to sell somebody on an idea that they didn't know they needed, or they didn't know it existed, or they didn't want it.
Right.
So trying to convince them of that. So I had to be very patient about this. And that was when podcasting started. So a friend of mine who I knew in radio had a successful podcast at the time called This Week in Tech. His name was Leo Laporte. We worked in radio station together. So he and I got together, and he says, I was like, what's this podcasting thing? Tell me about this. He says, he gave me the rundown on it. He says, but you got to start your first episode with somebody that has, a high profile name. So I had just read Zen Golf, and I thought, well, I'll invite Dr. Joe Parent. But the idea was to call golf courses and say to the golf course, hey, I'd like to do an infomercial for you, and it's not going to cost you anything. I just want you to I'm just going to talk to you over the phone. I'm going to record our conversation. I'm going to publish it on the internet on this thing called a podcast. And then we're going to put this thing called a podcast. We're going to put this on a platform, this new platform you've never heard of called iTunes. All this was brand new. And people are like, iTunes podcast, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, all you have to do is answer. I'm not going to grill you on anything. I just tell me about your facility. Tell me about the amenities. And now let's pick 2 or 3 holes that you can tell me how to play the hole. We'll take a tee tour of your golf course, but you're going to have to describe it. And so I started doing that simultaneously with this idea of developing the video for Tee Tour. And I started getting emails from people. So now I'm interviewing course pros, I'm interviewing mental coaches, I'm interviewing teachers, and I'm not making any headway on golf courses. They love the idea of the infomercial. And then in the interview that I do with them, I said, so how's it going? They're like, oh, this is really fun. And I'm enjoying this. This is great. Thank you. And I said, well, I do this for video too. We call it Tee Tour. And they're like, oh, really? Send me a proposal. Well, that was the first step in the door. Finally got someone to agree to let me send him a proposal. And then I never heard from them again. But in the meantime, I'm getting emails from people around the world going, hey, I really like this podcast that you're doing. And, I'm enjoying the entertainment and I'm learning a lot. But, you don't really have to talk about these golf courses that I've never heard of because I'm never going to play there. It's like, oh, great.
Wow.
So the podcast.
What a brilliant response to my first question. You're so good at this. You should start a podcast. You're a natural.
So that's what happened. It's to me, the way my career has always been is like, be a willow, not an oak. So if the wind is blowing that way, go with the wind. Right?
Yeah.
And so the podcast gained traction. Yeah. The podcast gained the traction and the video never went anywhere. So I just kept doing the podcast.
Well, this will blow your mind, but I was talking just yesterday to a longtime student who's just recently retired from the IT field. He goes, Jim, I got this great new AI application. It's based on real sophisticated AI. And basically, after you input all your shot outcomes and club selections and target choices and yardages over 5 rounds, it computes, it tells you what club to pick, how far to try to hit it, and where to hit it on the golf course.
Wow.
And it's an app on your phone. So it's just exactly what you were describing. Isn't that amazing? It's called, I think you said it's called Arcos or something like that.
Oh, Arcos has been around for a couple of years.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, game golf was like started with that, where it tracked your shots, shot by shot, and how far you hit every club. And they did a Indiegogo campaign, and I heard about it. They were in San Francisco, so I jumped all over it. And we were like the first podcast. We were the first ones to help promote that. I actually won a contest by having the most referrals, and I got to play golf with the owner of the company in San Francisco. And so Arcos came out after that, and a lot of people liked Arcos and the little tags that you put into the grips of your club.
I didn't realize that. So it actually, I see. So it actually has sensors on the club, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's really sophisticated.
Yeah.
Well, I think your listeners, by the way, congratulations on episode 800. And
thank you.
It's just amazing. As you know, I get a lot of students from your podcast.
That's great.
And have over the years. For people who don't know, I think I've been a guest on like 25 times.
I was going to count and I forgot. I'm sorry. I've been too busy.
I think it's 25 or 26.
Something like that.
But it's like a cool community of people who listen to Golf Smarter, and it's. Thank you very much for starting it. I mean,
well, you're very welcome.
We got to be friends through meeting via the podcast, and I know you've made many, many other friends over the years. So congratulations. I think your listeners would love to hear a little bit more about Fred Greene off the podcast, off the golf course. So if you feel comfortable, tell us a little bit about what life is like for you when you're not doing the podcast.
Well, before we do that, and thank you I'm so glad that I've been able to bring students to you. There are other people that, as you said, have been on the show, and they have been sending me messages congratulating me on 800. And so we're going to take a break right now. I'm going to take control of the podcast for a second here. We're going to take a break. And before we go into the break, we're going to hear somebody's message thanking, congratulating, and then we'll hear that message, another one coming out of the commercial, and then I'll answer your questions. So we'll be back after this.
Hi, this is BJ Barger. I've been listening to the podcast forever, it seems. I even went to the Czech Republic to golf with Fred 12 years ago. Wow. In that time, I've absorbed so much golf instruction and worked with several instructors that I've heard on the cast. I love to listen on the way to the golf course, but I think the best is still just Golf Smarter. Don't follow up a bad shot with a stupid shot. Also, now I'm a firm believer in preparing my body for my golf game. Workouts, stretching, and yoga Pilates all improve my game. Thanks, Fred.
This episode of Golf Smarter is brought to you by DynamicGolfers.com. Last week, I introduced you to one of the specialty programs that you get once you sign in for Dynamic Golfers, and that's their 7-month strength training videos. But today, I want to let you know that they also have videos to help with injuries. Of course, if you have any type of injury, always consult with your medical professional first. But there are some injuries that are common among golfers. Dynamic Golfers programs are meant to serve as a solution to common nagging pain points that most golfers experience. Each program varies in length, but most are meant to be repeated over time. The routine combines both mobility and strength movements, including working on your thoracic spine with postural movements. There is a 5-day program that includes videos that are only 10 to 12 minutes each and focuses on golfer's elbow with stretches for your wrists and shoulders. And lastly, at least at the time that I'm recording this, they offer workouts for both hip and knee pain. And by increasing mobility in the hips, hamstrings, quads, calves, and lower back, you'll be strengthening the hip flexors, hamstrings, quads, glutes, and your core. Now, interestingly, before I started doing Dynamic Golfers each day, I was having a lot of pain in my left knee after playing tennis with my son. I played a lot of tennis as a kid, but hadn't played in at least 20 years, and I'm not a runner. So this pain lingered for months, and I thought I surely needed to get a cortisone shot. But before my doctor agreed to do that, she wanted me to see a physical therapist, and after I spoke to the PT, I was given a daily stretch routine to strengthen my glutes, and sure enough, I was pain-free in 2 weeks. Then I started doing dynamic golfers, and I'm feeling great. So if you want to play better golf, work on the most important tool in your bag, your body. For only $9.99 a month, less than a sleeve of balls, join golfers worldwide that make dynamic golfers part of their daily routine. Go to dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter now to get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership when you check out using the coupon code GolfSmarter. Again, that's dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. And remember, to get the discount, enter GolfSmarter at checkout. I'll have links on our show notes, and also there's a link right at the homepage at golfsmarter.com.
Hello, Golf Smarter listeners. This is Matty Blake, yearly guest and huge fan and friend of Fred Greene. And I just wanted to congratulate Fred and all of you who listen to the podcast for 800 incredible episodes. It's the only one of its kind that actually can help you get better, not just talk about golf in a general way. Years ago, I stumbled upon Fred's podcast, and it has been just a great road ever since then. Fred does an amazing job. We've become friends, and I'm just so happy for him. It's an incredible accomplishment in the podcasting world. That's 800 episodes. I could never pick a favorite, but the ones that I have guested on, of course, are some of my favorites. The one time I actually said that Louis Oosthuizen wasn't a championship-level player has, of course, come back to haunt me over the years. But let's talk about positive things. Congratulations, Fred. I'm sorry I couldn't have been there, but I'm out on the road working on my stuff, so I hope to be on again soon. And congratulations, 800 episodes, amazing. Talk to you soon, my friend.
So, Fred, I want to know what you're like when you're not doing podcasts. Tell me a little bit about, obviously you play golf. Tell us a little about your own personal golf game, any other hobbies, maybe just a quick bit on family, friends, like what's your life like?
I have a blessed life. My current life, I've just celebrated my 41st wedding anniversary.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. My wife and I met working in rock and roll radio in San Francisco in the 70s. And wow. If you can imagine that in your head, sit back and think rock and roll radio, San Francisco 70s. And then
I can, man. I lived in the city for 2 years at San Francisco Zen Center, and then I moved across the bay to Berkeley.
There you go. So yeah,
in the 70s, yeah. So we were there, kind of compatriots at the time.
Right. So if you can imagine that all the images that might come to your mind when I say those things together, they're all true. Anything you can come up with, they're all true. And it was a great life. And So I have 2 sons and I have 2 grandchildren. And actually, you met my oldest grandchild. You met her at the opening of the show. That was her voice,
right,
introducing us.
Yeah.
As they're visiting this July 4th weekend. I hobbies. My passion has always been content creation. Since I was a teenager, I've been creating audio content because I wanted to go into radio, and I did go into radio right out of college. Actually, I went to San Francisco State. I grew up in Southern California, and I went to San Francisco State to major in radio and TV. And just before I graduated, a couple months before, I got an internship at the #1 FM rock station, and actually the very first FM rock station in the country, KSAN in San Francisco. I was an intern there for 3 months, and then they hired me to produce the morning show. And I ended up staying there for 2.5 years. And then I worked in San Francisco radio for over a decade. And then the radio station that I worked at in the early 80s, when I became a dad, just after I got married. Oh my gosh, that's a great story. So my wife and I we met working at KSAN. I got fired from KSAN, and there's an old thing in radio. If you've not been fired from a radio station, you've never worked in radio. So even though I took it personally because I was only 22 years old or 23 years old, I learned to get over it. And so my next job, I worked at a couple other radio stations and at the same time. But and my wife stayed working at KSAN. She was doing the morning news. And I was creative director of a station down in San Jose, but I was commuting from Oakland every day, an hour drive each way. And I kept bugging the place that I was working, the radio station. They had me working 2 radio stations. I was copywriter for the AM station. I was creative director for the FM station. And I kept like, dude, you moved me into this FM station and you're not giving me any more money. I want a raise. I want, that goes with the title. I'd like some more money. And they're like, man, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. So finally I said, look, we know you're getting married. Here's what we'd like to do. We're going to give you 2 weeks in Hawaii for your honeymoon. We're going to do it on trade. And back in the 80s is when they did trade all the time, meaning we'll give you they'll trade a condo in Hawaii, a resort in Hawaii for advertising time. So they get use of the resort. So we're going to give you 2 weeks in Hawaii for your honeymoon on trade. It's like, wow, that's really superb. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So my wife and I get married. We go off, we go off on our honeymoon to Hawaii. And the person that replaced my wife on the morning news for her replacement while she was away on her honeymoon was an old friend of the new program director at that radio station. And the new program director didn't like her. Didn't like her voice, didn't like her style of news. He just wanted, I want to hear about fire engines, not issues. And KSAN was known for being an issue-oriented news format. Although it was a rock station. And so while we were on our honeymoon, she was having these weird dreams. And so she called the morning man, like, what's going on? I'm getting the sense something's not right. And he goes, yeah, actually, I think you're right. Because they've put up a memo on the board that says, please welcome our new morning news person. And to answer your questions, yes, his last name is really Popejoy. As if she never existed, right?
Really?
Yeah. So we come back from our honeymoon and she's like, she calls, we get back on a Friday. She calls Saturday to the program director. And he says, yeah, just come in on Tuesday and pick up your check. You've been replaced. Oh, great.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I go in Monday morning to work and find out that my general manager, my program director have both been fired and replaced by a new general manager. And the new general manager comes in and his first thing he said when he got there was, all right, give me a staff list. We need to cut budgets and no more trades for employees. So he's going down the staff list and he goes, who's Fred Greene? And they go, oh, he's our creative director. We don't need a creative director. Where is he? He's in Hawaii on trade right now. It's like, oh, okay, he's fired. So I go into work Monday morning at 9 a.m. and by 10 a.m. I was out the door with a check in my hand. So here we are back for 48 hours from our honeymoon and we're both unemployed.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
That afternoon, there's a knock on our front door at the little house we're renting in Oakland, Rockridge area of Oakland, California. And it's our landlord. Said, we knew you guys were planning the wedding. We didn't want to bug you about this, but we've decided we're going to sell the house. So you can either buy the house or you're going to have to move. We said, well, we're unemployed. They went, okay, then you're moving. So now, within 72 hours, we don't have a place to live and we don't have a job. Let's test the wedding. Let's test this marriage right from the start.
Wow.
So we took a couple weeks and traveled around, went to New York, visited friends, came back. And I got a job at a radio station that I ended up being at for 6 years. And I was production director. And then she did some writing. And then she got a job at another very popular radio station, KFRC in San Francisco with Dr. Don Rose. Sure. And so she did news and public affairs there. And she ended up being there for 11 years. But at the tail end of my time at KYA and KSFO, which was where I was production director, the station bought the rights to broadcast Oakland A's games. And I was a big Oakland A's fan. And so I started coming up with ideas of things to do to create audio for the team and ways that I can get closer to the players and closer to the club. So I came up with this idea. I said, how about this thing called A's radio baseball cards? And they're like, what's that? And I said, just 1.5 minute stories. We do it as a pregame show, 1 minute story. And just have the players talking about themselves, about things other than baseball and other than their batting average and their salary, which the players really appreciated. And I was making friends with some of the players, having them do, hi, I'm Jose Canseco, and you're listening to 560 KSFO. You know, they do that in ball games.
So this is late 70s when the A's were like world champions,
No,
right?
no. A's were champions in 72, 3, and 4. This was 1984 around this time, 85. And this was when the Fosse family owned it, and the A's became really good. They had Jose Canseco was Rookie of the Year. The next year, Mark McGwire was Rookie of the Year. And the next year, Walt Weiss was Rookie of the Year. And they went to the World Series in 1987, 88, and 89.
Right.
And so I was really excited to be working with this team. And there was one guy that I was working with at the Oakland A's who came to me and said, hey, Fred, listen, I want to get into the booth somehow. Can you help me? Can you train me and be my producer and help me be better on microphone? It's like, sure. I got this idea for the A's radio baseball cards. Why don't you be the host of that? And I'll work with you in the studio and we'll train. Well, that guy's name was Ray Fosse. Ray Fosse has been the A's announcer now, the color man, for over 30 years.
Right.
So it worked out really well for him. Up to that point, I had been John Madden. You remember the name John Madden? A lot of people think he's a video game. He's a real guy. He was the head coach of the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah,
and he was an announcer on Monday Night Football for decades. So he was super popular. I was his recording engineer for about 3.5 years. So I'd work with high profile talent, which was never intimidating.
Well,
it's like, you're in my studio.
We never talked about this, but I'm a long time ago. I knew I spent a little time when he moved up to Eastern Oregon with Joe Rudy, who played in the 70s when he was playing for the A's.
Ray Fosse.
And then he ended up, Joe Rudy became their, after he retired, he went back and became their batting coach. He didn't enjoy retirement, so he wanted to get back, and he became their batting coach.
Right.
Oh, that's so interesting. So, all right. So that's a little bit about your background. Pretty interesting background.
But before we do that, it's time for another break. So let's hear another congratulations. And after this congratulations, when we come back, there's a couple of listeners that have been writing to me recently, thanking me for Golf Smarter and how it's impacted their life. And this, I've had a couple conversations and I recorded them. And the first one we're going to do, when we come out of this commercial, I want to introduce you to a listener named Josh Moore. And Josh told me this story about he's in his mid-30s. He played golf as a kid, but then he stopped playing. And now he's convinced he's going to be in the Champions Tour when he turns 50. He's come back to the game with a vengeance. And Golf Smarter, he said, has really helped him. So we're going to have a short conversation with him. And then after that, we'll take another break. And then we'll come back and you and I will continue this conversation.
Hey, Fred. Rick Petrick in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Congratulations on number 800. I've been listening to your podcast for about 11, 12 years, I guess in the late 200 series. Anyway, of all the podcast episodes you've had, and they're all great, I can only say the most instructive ones have been the Instruction podcast with Jim Venettos, Sensei Jamie Zimron, my buddy Cristo Garcia, Josh Zander, and of course our beloved Tony Manzoni. I don't know where you get the motivation from, my friend, but keep up the great work and hopefully another 800 episodes.
Hey, Fred, this is Paul Cervantes, co-author of Tony Manzoni's The Lost Fundamental. A big congratulations for your 800th episode. And I'm just wondering, do you have the time or energy for 800 more? I'm hoping you do.
Hey, Josh, this is Fred Greene from Golf Smarter.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Just read your email. I'm blown away by your story.
I love golf. I love golf, and I love listening to you talk to people about golf.
Why?
From a production standpoint, your podcast is far and above anything else I listen to. Even like when I listen to like a Minister like podcasts, your delivery and your line of questioning and how you let people talk, which is always something I struggle with because I'm always so excited. It's just remarkable. I love that you let people go off on their crazy tangents.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's really nice of you because, I don't feel like I'm in a position to dispute what people are saying, so I just let them go.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff does sound crazy, but you know what? It's like, that's the great thing about golf because you can just let people go with it. And some people are going to love some of the stuff they hear. Some people aren't going to like it, but I'll listen to it all.
Well, that's always my hope is that people will, if they don't like what they're hearing, just wait till next week because you'll probably hear something completely different.
So, yeah, I mean, I've been listening to it for a couple of years now. And I dive into your mulligans. I dive into your website every now and then. It's just such great content to listen to while you're hitting balls. Or last night I listened to 2 hours before going to bed. I re-listened to the ones I really, really like course management stuff or philosophy. And I keep streaming like Vision 54. I listen to Dr. Parent. A lot of this stuff is rebroadcasted on Imagine Golf too. And so they reached out for the ambassador program. So I've been kind of doing a couple of WebExes or Zooms with them and their team. But a lot of your stuff just parallels, which is awesome.
In your email, you talked about how you played when you were young and then you left for a while. Now, fill me in what brought you back and how you've become so passionate again about the game.
So, I grew up playing with my dad. My dad was one of the dads that was he could shoot pretty well just as he works at a refinery, he's worked at refineries for 30 years, no college degree, just like a technician. So, him in his golf league, he picked up golf. He's pretty intense about when he used to play. He still plays a lot, but he was always telling me when of course Tiger's coming up, he's one of the dads that told their kids you gotta play golf. So I never played competitively, but I hit balls in our front yard, and the neighbor had a sheep pasture, so we would hit balls in the sheep pasture. And out of my siblings, I played the most with them. So he'd bring me out at 6 a.m. play these terrible little golf courses around us that have hardly any grass, terrible greens, but I play with them, And so I kicked it around. I think he tried to give me lessons from somebody else one time for a couple weeks in the summer when I was 10. I played 5-10 times a year, on vacation a couple of times with him in the mornings. And that was
take
about
me
it.
Too seriously.
No. I throw the club back, I throw it forward. But that being said, I'm an athletic person. I would consider myself a highly athletic person. So at some point, I think senior year in high school, I got a job at a golf course and I played 36 holes a day. And so after my year of high school, I was man, I want to go play community golf somewhere. And so I did it. Didn't get any lessons. I refused to listen to them about shortening my backswing. I set the club similar to Phil Mickelson over my shoulder, a little bit past parallel and flexible. And so I don't even know if I had kept the handicap. I was probably 7 to 10, 7 to 9, because I shot low 80s, high 70s. The one year I played community college with no lessons. And then I went to the San Diego Golf Academy in Myrtle Beach, right? So 1 year of college, and I'm let me do this. Let me go be a tour pro or golf club pro, right? And then I just stopped. I thought the school was a scam. Give them $60,000 for 2 years. I'm going to come out making $14 an hour. Well, I'll just stay down here, right? Sold all the golf clubs. The golf was out the window 9 years. I think I played 3 or 4 rounds from 19 to 20 to 28. And in that time of 8 years, I got my degree in exercise science. I was married, now I have 3 kids, but I had my son at the time. Yeah, and so golf was never to return, apparently, until my buddy who played D1 tennis called me up. I know at the time he was an 8-9 handicap. He was oh, we're going to play a golf trip with us and the guys. You want to play? And I'm yeah, I'll play, whatever. Let me go get clubs. Yeah, so I started at a 24 handicap. I went out buying clubs that were 1.5 inches too long for me. Didn't realize until I played a couple of rounds. I'm I just spent $200. So I rebuilt them myself. I got my lofts and lines and adjusted. I swung weighted myself with lead tape and tungsten down the shaft, regripped them myself, and now I kind of like do that with all my clubs. Even the brand new P760s I bought, I wound up swing weighting them myself because the KBS shafts are all back weighted. And so I'm a fanatic. So 3 years, that's basically all I've been doing. Rebuilding, watching my swing, training myself how to swing right, listening to your podcast. Every year it gets more fanatical. Yeah, I dropped $1,200 from my backyard practice facility through COVID, like the professional PGA Tour hitting net.
Wow.
10-foot poles, $500 mat. So it's like, all right, so like somewhere in that whole progression, I'm like, senior tour is like, it's like 50. I'm 32. Where can I go with this? I'm like, I'm a 16 handicap at the time, like 2 years ago. And I'm like, I got good mind game. Let's just set a semi goal. And so I usually didn't share with anybody, but my friends this year were like, where are you going with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not even the best one in our group, but I'm pretty sure I can make the tour. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you even more for writing in and sharing your story with me. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel really great about this.
Yeah, I share a podcast with everybody. I'm trying to get
thank
my buddy
you.
that's
and thank you for being an ambassador. Yeah.
Yeah, you're phenomenal. I mean, you've been doing it for a long time. I know why you're successful. I hope you continue to grow. I hope you continue to bring people on. It's just such a great bridge between a lot of the too serious like golf stuff, right? And then people like me that just love it, but it's like we just need information and we need a good forum to listen to it and just soak it all and have fun. So I think that's what you're really great at, and I love the way you do your show. And I'll probably listen to for life.
Oh, well, I hope you're probably my life, not yours. You're a lot younger than I am, but thank you so much. I'm really touched.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'll give you a shout out when I'm 50 and on tour.
You are on. I will be there. Maybe I'll carry your bag.
Yeah, I'll need a caddy. I mean, unless my son picks it up,
I'd caddy you for a day.
Caddy. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
This has been great, and anything I can do to support kind of what you do and give you feedback and just keep spreading the word, and you're helping me. I can't tell you how invaluable that's been. At least 5 strokes, probably. I mean, I just shot a 76, and I 3-putted on a 320-yard par 4 that I drove. So it's like there were strokes out there. It could have been the day I broke par for the first time.
Well, please. You have a great day and good luck. And I'm cheering for you because I want to carry your bag one day.
Yeah, let's go. That's a great plan.
Aloha, Fred. Congratulations on your 800th episode. And here's to another 800 more. This is Kerry Valentine. I'm from Maui, Hawaii, and I have spoken with you on the mental game for pros and how to be your very best. And I've had some fun talking about interviews we've aired with Stuart Sink, Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, Jordan Spieth, and even Don Cheadle, the actor. Yes, he's, as most people know, a great lover of golf. I am very grateful for you, Fred, of your support for golfers all around the world, and you've created an incredible community of enthusiastic golfers that listen to you week in and week out on all things, mental game, driving tips, to even creating customized golf clubs. So it's always fun and interesting listening to your show, and you make it a blast. And I'm always very thankful for what you do. Congratulations, Fred. Here's to another 800 episodes. You're probably like, oh no. But yes, it's in you and you could do it. Appreciate your passion. Appreciate your expertise. Aloha and a hui ho.
My name is James Ragonnet. I wish to celebrate a major milestone in Fred Greene's illustrious career, namely his 800th episode. Over the years, Fred has granted me 2 interviews. Several months ago, we discussed my latest golf book, entitled Your Inner Golf Guru, The Science of Rethinking, Relearning, and Revamping Your Swing. Several years ago, we discussed my first golf book, Golf's 3 Noble Truths, Golf Smarter has become an impactful and valuable resource primarily because it speaks to every golfer's desire to learn. All inquisitive and creative people, especially golfers, have an insatiable desire to learn how and why things work. It's human nature. To ignite new thinking and learning among all golfers, Fred interviews diverse guests of all persuasions on every facet of the game. Fred understands how continuous learning promotes self-esteem, happiness, and well-being. Learning something new and relevant generates the same ineffable delight you experienced as a child when you wore a new pair of shoes. In each episode, Fred ushers golfers into what sports psychologists call the zone, the inner bliss arising from fresh insights, creative breakthroughs, and new growth. I wish Golf Smarter, the learning tree that Fred planted in 2005, continued success. It's rather ironic that a person whose surname is Greene has propagated so much growth among so many golfers.
Okay, we're back. So, Fred, tell me a bit about your early life, your childhood, and also I want to find out at some point in this conversation how you got involved in golf, who introduced you, how it all happened, and basically how much you love it. But start with a little bit about early life, childhood.
Well, I was born in a town called Montebello in the East Los Angeles area. My parents, my mom was from Chicago. My dad was from Cleveland. They met when they were 12 years old, when my dad moved from Cleveland. My dad was the youngest of five, and he was an orphan because his father in Cleveland, when my dad was about 7, his father was shot in a gas station robbery and killed.
Kidding. Wow.
And I don't know much about my grandfather. His name was Sam Greenberg. And that's my middle name is Samuel, so it was named after him. Mm-hmm. But I do know that he was shot in a gas station robbery a year after his brother was shot in a gas station robbery, the same gas station.
Wow.
So I have a hunch it was during the Prohibition time and that they were maybe smuggling alcohol from Canada into Cleveland. That's my guess. I don't know this. If anybody has any stories about Cleveland and the rum runners and the Jewish mafia, and all the illegal activity that was happening in the late 1920s, if you want to tell me about it, if you know anything, I'd love to hear from you. My grandparents on both sides were immigrants from Russia, and when my dad was the youngest of 5, and his mother passed away when he was 9. She had breast cancer. So the oldest brother, who had asthma problems, moved to California, got a job, and moved his siblings out to Los Angeles. And then my dad met my mom just after they arrived. And so my grandmother on my mother's side kind of took my dad in, and my parents were together from the time they were 12. My parents died in a car accident when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I lost my parents when I was 7. My brother was 13. Wow. My sister was 16. My sister was in the car with my parents.
Oh, man. That must have been just unbelievable for you.
I woke up on a Monday morning and there were people sitting around my bed crying, and they got me dressed and sent me to school. They didn't tell me what was going on, and I didn't find out for a couple of days what was going on. And so my maternal grandparents moved into our house, and I was pretty much raised by my maternal grandparents. Then when I was after I was 13, we moved to the San Fernando Valley, and we lived in an apartment, the three of us, my grandmother, my grandfather, and I. My brother had moved out. He went to college for a year. Then he went off the military because he had to, because Vietnam was going on and he was about to get drafted and he wasn't in school anymore. So while he was in boot camp, they had the first draft and he had a high number, so he didn't really need to go. So I lived with my sister I moved in with my sister when I was 16, and I lived with her till I was 20. And when I was 20, I moved to San Francisco, and I've been here ever since. So, yeah. So,
fascinating.
Thank you. It's, But I've never been one to, I have friends that I've known for, that I went to college with that never knew I didn't have parents. It's not the thing that I lead with. That's not my lead story. And I don't carry that with me in front of me. I don't, it just never has. Luckily, I never really realized I was an orphan until I was in my 20s, because there was so much love in the house, and I was so close to my grandparents that I never really, that's what that term is. Yeah, I just thought I lost my parents.
Yeah, so you had that loving support system in place. So you were able to deal with the trauma, and obviously in a very successful, productive way.
Yeah, I learned about resiliency early on.
Yeah,
it's just,
that's a big deal in golf, is resiliency.
Well, yeah,
part of the mental game.
My grandmother, who raised me, she was she would tell an amazing story, and it's actually on YouTube. She tells this incredible story about when she was a teenager, and the pogroms came into her village and killed all her family members, and she escaped when she was a young teenager. Wow. And her story of coming to the United States is truly amazing as well. With my grandfather, they came in as brother and sister, except my grandmother was pregnant. They're like, wait, brother and sister. And then my grandmother had a miscarriage on the boat, and they sent her back to Europe. And my grandfather, a year later, found her in Paris and brought her home. Crazy stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, the genealogy stuff is fascinating. My wife's an amateur genealogist, and she's done the whole thing with my family, the Waldrons and her family. In fact, we've taken a couple of family trips to Europe.
Wow.
Along those lines.
Where in Europe is your family from?
Well, for me, I'm 100%. I'm literally 99.95% Irish. She did the DNA test as my birthday present 2 years ago.
Yeah.
She's a mixture. Her family comes from the Czech Republic and Germany.
Well, I have not done the genealogy test, but my wife has and my son has. So we're pretty much 100% Ashkenazi Jew from Russia, the Ukraine area, Kiev, outside of Kiev. Yeah. And I think it's crazy, but I think my wife's grandparents and my grandparents all came from just outside of Kiev, or Kyiv.
Wow.
Now pronounced Kyiv.
Kyiv, they call it. Yeah,
Kyiv. Yeah.
Well, that's a good reason to leave. Those pogroms were pretty nasty.
Yeah.
When you think of the millions of people, European Jews who moved here from about, 1875, 1880, when it really took off, until basically right before World War II. There was a lot of people who moved over from Europe to the States.
Yep.
Wow. So tell me about your golf game. Why do you love golf, Fred?
You
love golf?
I do love golf.
Ask you that first. Or you like Larry David, where you have a love-hate relationship with it?
It goes back to one of your first questions. What's my hobbies? So I produce audio, I produce video. That's my work, but I love doing it. And when I retire, I'll continue doing it because I won't be retiring. I just love doing it. And I play golf and family. I mean, that's pretty much my life. I have worked because of the kind of work that I chose to do of being a content creator in audio. I've pretty much spent my entire career working in a room by myself. And so when COVID happened, it's like no change for me. And I've been working at home when I started. We haven't even talked about what I did when I left radio, after radio baseball cards. When I did that, I've left radio in '86 and I've been on my own, and I've been working in a room by myself the whole time. So COVID was easy for me. It was not that difficult. I've been working from home since 1986. And so the way I got started playing golf was my younger son was 12 and it was summer camp and we sent him to a golf camp. And one day he came home, and I think I've told this story on the show, is he came home from camp and said, "You want to know what I learned today?" I said, "Sure. What'd you learn?" He said, "Etiquette." I went, "What?" "Yeah, there's a whole thing about etiquette on golf. You want me to show you?" "Absolutely." So we went down to the 9-hole course down the street from us, and we went on the putting green, and he started showing me this stuff. And I was just smitten with the game immediately. I just fell in love with it right there. So I was probably around 42 at the time, because if he was 12, I was 42. Yeah, I'm 30 years old. So I just fell in love with the game. And so when my project that I had created with the Oakland A's, after Radio Baseball Cards, which went 2 years, and now is a podcast from our second year when we took it national. Didn't finish that story.
You got time.
We got time. This is going to be a long episode, and I appreciate you hanging out if you're still listening. So I just fell in love with the game. And that's when I came up with, how am I going to turn this into my business? Because I had my passion was baseball. I turned that into my business. And now it's like my passion is golf. How do I turn that into my business? And so I tried T-Tour, and T-Tour didn't work, but I went to Golf Smarter, and I created the show, and I pulled the name Golf Smarter. It was part of the marketing stuff, and I pulled it out of a book about golf course architecture from Robert Trent Jones Jr. And
all right, so I want to dial in more deeply. What about golf do you love? Because I've asked this question to every new student, because it really affects how, what kind of coaching I'm going to use in terms of content, especially. Mm-hmm. So what is it? Is it the putting? Is it the short game? Is it the long game? Is it hitting the driver far and straight? Or is it the mental challenge? What parts of it do you really find intriguing?
Being outside and walking.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing it's I played a lot of sports as a kid, never organized sports, but I played 2 years of Little League, but I loved sports. I always was very active and hyperactive. And it was the hardest game I'd ever played. And it was very frustrating, but I knew I could do a little bit better. I knew I could get myself a little bit better, but I wanted to learn how. So I started interviewing teachers. I figured, okay, you're self-employed. You're not making a lot of money. How can you do this? I'll interview teachers and see if they can give me a lesson on the phone.
That's great.
And so it was really, it all came from that. And it just gave me a place to go. So I also swim. And I've done shows about, swimming and incorporating that into my golf exercise routine.
We that's interesting because, I used to teach swimming for a living.
Oh, I did not know that.
I was a swimming coach. Yeah. Yeah. For Alameda County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was a lifeguard there too. I was a lifeguard and I was a swimming coach.
Uh-huh. So I was a camp counselor. I was a camp counselor in my teen years, through college, and taught swimming.
No kidding.
Yeah. And drove the bus, did all these crazy things.
Wow.
I remember driving the bus at camp. I was driving the bus for camp on August 9th, 1972, and Nixon was resigning, and I told the kids, everyone quiet on the bus, listen to this, because you're going to be talking about it the rest of your life. And we listened to the Nixon's resignation speech on the radio.
So baseball, well, it just crossed my mind. Baseball, we're both roughly the same age. You grew up Southern Cal. I'm thinking Sandy Koufax had to be your favorite baseball player, no?
And that's going to lead into more of Radio Baseball Cards. We're going to do that. We're going to come back and talk about that. We're going to take another break. But when we come out of this break, this time, I want you to meet Austin Conrad. Now, Austin, you're going to pick it up right in the middle of the phone call that I have with Austin. Austin wrote me a letter, and I described this, that this is crazy, Jim. I get letters a lot saying, hey, I really like the podcast. I listen to it while I'm driving, or I listen to it while I'm at work. And that's how the interview, the letter started. But then the next line was, I'm going to be a senior in high school. It's like, whoa, wait. You listen to it at work and you're going to be a senior in high school? Yeah, and I just won the conference championship. So I was fascinated, so I called him up, and we're going to listen to that conversation after this.
Hi, Golf Smarter. My name's Pete Makepeace. I'm calling from Birmingham in England. I started listening to Golf Smarter back in 2006 when the show was quite new, and I've obviously learned a whole load of stuff from Fred. The thing that really sticks in my head, though, and really think about it at least once every round, is Fred's standard comment of don't ever follow a bad shot with a stupid shot. I guess I'm saving at least one every round by not taking stupid shots, and yeah, that really sticks in my head. Thank you, and good luck with the next 800 shows, Fred.
Hi there, Fred. It's Jane Story here, calling from England. I'm the author of Breed Golf and The Practice of High Performance. I've been on many podcasts over the past few years, and it isn't necessarily the quality of the guest. For me, it's all about the person asking the questions. And Fred, I find your manner really gentle, but you're also obviously very, very interested in what your participants are bringing. And I know that you thoroughly research all the books and all the material that's sent to you before we get on these calls together, particularly as my work is pioneering and I'm sort of forging a new path in helping golfers to understand really the importance of the mind-body connection as a way to join up their mental game and their technical training. So, Fred, thanks again that you've taken the time and the trouble to really research and understand this new paradigm, and for the fantastic interviews that we've done. Congratulations on your 800th episode. All the best.
It's not every day that you get to go on a huge podcast like yours, so that's pretty exciting.
It's only huge because you listen to it.
Oh, well, I enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate that. Why I don't even know where to start with this. I get this email today, and it starts off similar to many emails that I get. I love the show. I listen to every episode as I'm working. Yeah. And then you talk about Tony Manzoni. Great. But then you threw me this curveball I just could not believe. I had to run and read it to my wife. I'm going to be a senior in high school, and I'm just coming off a very successful golf season with being the Conference Player of the Year. First of all, congratulations on Conference Player of the Year.
It's very exciting.
It's very exciting. Secondly, what's a high school kid doing to listen to this old guy's podcast?
I love the game. I love golf. I've been playing since kindergarten. And so I fell in love with it the first time I picked up a golf club. And the more I learn about it, the more I improve. And that's intoxicating. The more I just can't get enough of it. And so your podcast is just a way for me to continue learning. I get to hear from so many different people about the golf swing and the golf mentality. And it just improves my game. The more episodes I listen to, it's fantastic.
It just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. So tell me about your high school and what conference you're in and your season.
Well, I live in central Wisconsin. I attend Waldron High School. And so we're a Division II school. So the competition isn't too great, but there's some good golfers that I have to compete with.
From what I understand, Wisconsin golf is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, there's some really good players. It's a pretty big accomplishment to be Player of the Year. We have 6 or 7 teams in our conference, and each of them has some really good players that I've played with. One of them was pretty even with me, so I had to fight him all 2 months of our season. And it was a good friendship and a good competition. I love to compete, and golf is my vehicle to that competition.
Do you play any other sports?
I don't. It actually keeps me busy all year long. So I golf anytime there's not snow on the ground, and then when there is snow on the ground, we have a shed, and I just throw a net up in the shed and hit balls whenever I get a chance.
So what's your superpower on the golf course?
Definitely my short game. My short game is pretty good, I would say. I feel like I can get it up and down anywhere from 30 yards and in. And if I don't, then I can move on pretty good. It takes a lot for me to get flustered on the golf course, which I find to be a really good asset to have, especially in competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good for you. Are you already starting to think about college golf?
I haven't been contacted by anyone except one school. I'm definitely not good enough to play Division I, but hopefully like a Division III school I'd be able to play. Maybe get a scholarship. That would be awesome. Professional golf is not in my future, I can tell you that. But playing competitively at a higher level is really intriguing to me.
Well, I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that you don't even think you can play D1 after winning conference championship.
I've looked at the scores, and I mean I can shoot in the 70s pretty consistently. I can shoot around par, but then on my bad rounds I get up in high 70s. If I really play bad, it's low 80s. So,
I really hate you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not good enough to play D1, but it is good enough to play D3. So I'd hope to get at least be a walk on.
Yeah, but you're probably going to be a lot better next year too.
That's the hope. We have the state tournament too in Wisconsin. So in the regionals, I took second, and then in my sectionals to qualify for state, I missed by 1 stroke. So that was disappointing, but I still placed 7th in the sectional. So I was pretty proud of my performance there. I didn't have my best game, but that's golf.
That's golf. So why do you think you were selected as the conference player of the year?
No, I won it. So they determined that based on...
Oh, it was a competition.
Yes. So you have 6 or 7 tournaments that we go play each school's course, and then they add up all your scores, and whoever has the lowest wins. And I ended up winning by, I believe, 23 shots at the end. So,
oh my gosh,
it was pretty consistent throughout the year.
Austin, I'm telling you, now we just got to work on your confidence because, buddy,
Yes.
you've got the game.
Mhm.
If you can win a competition by over 20 strokes, and think that you can't play D1, and you have another full year of high school left.
Mhm.
Any requests of mental game coaches that we can get on here to help you out?
Whoever you can get, I eat that stuff up.
All right. Well, I'm going to do what I can to help, and I am going to be following. I want you to stay in touch because I want to hear that you've made the D1, that you're playing D1 golf when you get to college.
Well, thank you.
And I can't thank you enough for listening to Golf Smarter, for reaching out and sharing and learning as much as you can anywhere you can.
It's a pleasure, and I'm so glad to have found your podcast. It definitely has helped.
Why?
Just the amount of information and the amount of wisdom. I don't have to dig it out of the dirt, if that makes sense. So I have access to all these people who've put in a lot of the legwork, and then I can reap the benefits of their teachings. So then I can go apply it, and much of the time it improves my game.
Hi, this is Dr. Bob Winters, theconfidencedoctor.com. Congratulations, Fred Greene, for 800 great episodes of Golf Smarter. I look forward to actually talking with you again on the best podcast in golf. So continued success. Here's to the next 800.
Hi, Fred. Congratulations on number 800. That is an amazing accomplishment. This is Josh Zander from Zander Golf and the Zander Golf app. It has been an absolute pleasure for me to participate in your podcast. And also, I'm a huge fan as well, and I love listening to you. So keep on going on to the next 800. Congrats, and keep it up.
Were you a fan of Koufax?
So I was a huge fan of Sandy Koufax. And as a matter of fact, the crazy thing about that is that when radio baseball cards, when I did this with A's radio baseball cards, and I was doing it with Ray Fosse, I got a lot of press, national press. I mean, Sports Illustrated did a little piece on it, a little blurb on it. And USA Today did stories on it. And I was just getting a lot of, and I'm like, this thing has legs. This is an idea that could work. So I started talking because I was working at the Oakland Coliseum watching Oakland A's games, and I had press credentials and I was recording the players and stuff. I had access to go out during the batting practice and talk to people. So I talked to various announcers from around the country that were famous, like Bob Uecker and Tony Kubek was announcing for the Yankees. And I talked to an announcer for the Chicago White Sox at the time, who was Don Drysdale.
Sure.
Right? So a couple weeks, and I talked to him about this radio baseball cards idea and asked him if he'd like to host it, blah, 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 and I asked each guy. A couple weeks later, I get a phone call, and the guy says, "This is Don Drysdale's agent. He's in." Like, I'm sorry? What? Yeah, Don said he'd like to be on your show. Oh my God.
Wow.
So Don Drysdale is now the host of Radio Baseball Cards. And we only did it for one season because we had a syndicator all lined up. They had fronted us money. I had sent 2 reporters and myself. We went to spring training for weeks to cover every team and as many Hall of Famers as we can find. And so during spring training, Drysdale and I would record these shows. So I would take all these interviews we did, and I would find the cuts, the stories that I wanted to feature, and then I would write the script, and then I would find Drysdale wherever he was, and we went to a recording studio that I would hire, and we'd record his segments. Well, we're recording episode number 162, and this is going to get to Sandy Koufax, I promise. We're recording episode 162, the last one, and it's a story about Harmon Killebrew hitting his only home run in the World Series. And it was in
Killebrew was he the Tigers? Detroit?
No, Minnesota Twins. Minnesota Twins.
That's right, yeah.
So Killebrew tells the story about him hitting, but the thing was, it was the 1965 World Series, Dodgers and Twins. And Drysdale, Koufax announces, I'm not pitching game one of the World Series. It's Yom Kippur, the Jewish high holiday. Right. I can't pitch. I'm not going to do it.
I remember it was a big controversy.
It was huge.
Yeah,
it was a huge story.
Yeah. It was a front page story for sure.
Right. And Jews all across the country were like out of their minds, crazy, excited. Wow, what a class act, right? That he would do this.
Yeah.
So anyway, Drysdale and I are recording this script, and he stops in the middle of recording the script, and he looks at me and goes, wait, you're Jewish, right? And I went, yeah. And he said, did you know Koufax was Jewish? And I said, Don, I've told you that you and Sandy were my heroes growing up. Yeah, of course. Sure. I knew about that. Yeah. He goes, did you know he didn't pitch in the 1965 World Series because it was Yom Kippur? And I'm like, Don, I said, Don, let me explain something to you. There's two things that most Jews in this country knew, two basic things that most Jews know, Moses and Koufax. And
exactly.
And it pretty much ends there. Unless you're really observant, you really don't know a lot about it. And he says, okay, I have a story for you probably don't know. I said, all right, try me. And this is one of my all-time favorite stories. And Don says, okay, 1965 World Series, game one, we're in Minnesota. I get the nod. Koufax isn't pitching. I get the nod. First two innings, I get shelled. It's 5-0. There's only one out in the second inning. It's already 5-0. Harmon Killebrew has just hit a home run off of me. I look into our dugout, and there's the manager of the Dodgers, Walt Alston, with his foot on the top step of the dugout. And I know what this means. I'm done for the day. So I walk off the mound, and I'm talking in Drysdale's voice. I walk off the mound. I pick up the rosin bag. I toss it on the ground. And as I'm coming back up to the mound, there's Walt Alston coming up to the mound with his hand outstretched to me as if to say, all right, kid, give me the ball. You're done. Just slap. And so he says, I take the ball. I slap in his hand. I lean over and I whisper to him, I bet you wish I was Jewish too.
Oh, that's great. What a great story.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that story before. That's the greatest story ever. I've never heard it. And a couple years later, a biography on Koufax came out, and that story was in it. And I was like,
that's
so
interesting.
touched.
Wow.
Greatest story of my, I love that story, and I still tell it and blow people away every single time. It's unbelievable. So
amazing. And no, for the listeners, we didn't rearrange this in advance. That was my Koufax comment was completely off the top, like everything in these podcasts.
Yeah, it's true.
Completely improv.
Yep.
I had no idea that you knew that story. That's interesting.
I've got to throw this in then. So after Radio Baseball Cards, I get another call from the Oakland A's, and now I'm not working for the radio station anymore, but I get a call from the general manager of the Oakland A's. Actually, it was the vice president of marketing, a guy named Andy Dolich. He says, calls me in, and he says, come on, let's have a meeting. I want to talk to you. And he says, I want you to come up with an idea that has something to do with fans and broadcasting. I'm like, okay, sure. Can we talk next week? So now I've got this challenge of what am I going to do about the fans and broadcasting? I call him back up. I said, all right, I'm ready to have the meeting. Let's talk about it. I said, I have 3 questions before we start. I said, 1, why'd you call me? And he said, I've just seen you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm and you're creative. So I thought I'd give it a shot. It's like, that's fair. I'll go with that. And second question, what's in it for me? He says, I don't know. I don't know what it is yet. I said, all right, my last question. Can I own it? And he said, I don't know what it is. What are you talking about? I said, It's called Fantasy Play-by-Play. We set up an announce booth at the ballpark where fans get to be the announcer of the game and go home with a videotape of it.
Oh, cool.
Can I own it? And he said, if you could say, he says, who's paying for it? And I said, we get a sponsor for it. And so when they're doing play-by-play, they have to read commercials, and you can put signs up on banners, and you can sell. And he says, if you can sell it, you can own it. Well, that idea took me for the next 20 years. And it ended up being called Budweiser Fantasy Play-by-Play in various markets around the United States. I had 14 major, over the time with Budweiser, that was from 1987 to 2000. Budweiser sponsored it in 14 major league stadiums, 5 NBA arenas, and 4 NHL arenas.
No kidding.
And
wow.
so I hired people in every ballpark. I had the team do the hiring. I paid them. I set up all the equipment. I trained the people, and the press absolutely ate this thing alive. And so it went really well. I was traveling every summer. I was traveling around the country going to ball games. My friends hated me because I just got to go to ball games.
Did anybody ever end up becoming a professional broadcaster from doing that?
Yes. The last show I did, well, in 1992, Major League Baseball called me and said, that thing you do at the ballpark, we're going to do this thing called a Fan Fest at the All-Star Game this year. Can you do your thing at the Fan Fest? I go, what's a Fan Fest? Oh, it's a baseball theme park that we're going to do for 2 weeks leading up to the All-Star Game, so all the fans can feel like they're part of the activity. I'm like, I'll call you next week. Let me figure out how to alter this. So I came back to him. I said, yeah, let him announce great game endings. You know, the last pitch, the home run that wins it, Joe Carter's home run, Bill Buckner's error. You know, there's great moments in baseball. Hank Aaron's 713th home run, 700 whatever that was that broke the record, Babe Ruth's record. And so now I'm doing fan festivals for Major League Baseball, and all the other leagues call me and like, can you do our thing? So I did the Super Bowl for 16 years. I did the NBA All-Star Game. I did the NHL All-Star Game. I did the Baseball All-Star Game. I did WrestleMania with fantasy play-by-play, which was so much fun for me. I loved it because I loved wrestling growing up as a kid. I traveled around. I went to Australia with the NBA to do a weekend show in Brisbane. I traveled around the country with Six Flags theme parks for Sports Illustrated. I did an ESPN tour. I mean, this was 20 years of letting people be the announcers. And the last show I ever did was in 2007. I got a call from the D-League team for the Houston Rockets down in McCollum, Texas. And the kid who was doing their marketing there, he said, when I was 7 years old, I went to a Six Flags theme park and I did fantasy play-by-play there. And from that moment on, I've always wanted to be an announcer. And I would love to have you, now that I'm the marketing director of this basketball team, this professional basketball team, minor league, but still, we're doing a fan fest, and I'd love to have fantasy play-by-play there. And so this
so cool.
I told this kid, I said, okay, I'll do this job for you, and I don't care what you pay me, because you're, a small team, but you have to guarantee me two things. One, if you ever make it to the big leagues and you're an announcer, I get to be your engineer for one game. And two, when you make it into the Broadcast Hall of Fame, you have to say you got your start with fantasy play-by-play. And he said, that's awesome. Okay. And so that was the last show that I did in 2007. That's why, that's right around when Golf Smarter was getting going. And it was I had so much fun doing that. That was the greatest thing. In 2009,
so you're literally the embodiment of, who am I thinking of? Joseph Campbell's phrase, follow your bliss.
Yeah.
The guy the philosopher and
academic. I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. I don't like test, I'll just go test this idea. If it works, great. We'll go with it. If it doesn't, okay. But I don't do a lot of business plans and things like that. Just let it run.
Yeah.
And then in 2009, Golf Smarter, we did a trip to Phoenix and with listeners. We had like a dozen listeners or something. We went to Phoenix and played at the TPC Scottsdale the week after the Phoenix Open. And while we were there, one of the guys who was a mailman in Canada who came on this trip with us, he says, we're riding over to the golf course in a minivan. And he said, "Were you the guy that did fantasy play-by-play?" I'm like, "What?"
He remembered. Wow.
You knew about fantasy play? He goes, "I saw it once on a TV news story and I always thought it was the coolest idea. Was that you?" I'm like, "Oh my God, you're following me." Yes, that was me. And that was pretty awesome. I'm overwhelmed. So I need to take a break. Wow. Let's take another timeout. We'll be back after this. Is that okay, Jim? Can we take a timeout again?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
perfect,
good. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Terry Kaler from EdisonWedges.com. It's been really fun being on your show and sharing my knowledge of wedges with your listeners over the years, Fred. And congratulations on episode 800. I look forward to being with you again soon to continue to talk about wedges in the short game and hopefully help all of your listeners golf smarter.
Hey, Fred. This is Richard E. Todd, author, speaker, golfer at thegolfrules.com. After playing the game for 20 years, I found your podcast and a couple of episodes on the proper swing arc and golf course management helped me to drop over a dozen strokes that summer. You have forever changed my golf game. And through your friendship and being on the Golf Smarter podcast, you have forever changed my business.
All right, we're back. Fred, I want to hear more about your golf game. So tell me what you're good at and what you suck at. What's your best strength and your worst weakness?
Right now, my worst weakness are short putts. Okay. That's why I keep having putting instructors on the show. Help me! Right. Help me! Mental coaches, help me! So that is definitely been my worst thing is that.
Do you know your average putts per round number? Any idea what that stat is?
Probably 34.
Well, that's
33, 34.
Yeah, so not bad. I like it to be 32 or less, but
right. That's what I'm shooting. That's what I'm shooting for.
Yeah,
that's what I'm shooting for. And so, with the group of guys that I play, I'll tell you what my worst thing is: gambling. I know that golf is a gambling game. I know. I understand that. I know that. What's the point of a handicap? It's all about gambling. That is my worst thing. I've never enjoyed gambling, and someone who's been self-employed for as long as I have, to me, every morning I wake up is a gamble. I mean, through all my years of being self-employed, on January 1st each year, I have no idea what my year is going to look like. I never have. Because, now with podcasting, I have ongoing clients for like the first time. It's always been one job here, one job there, one job there. The gig economy. I've been doing the gig economy for years.
Right.
So when it comes to gambling, the pressure, I really feel the pressure. If there's a putt that means something, if there's a shot that means something, my knees will shake. That is clear. Right, that is the worst part of my game.
So I'm thinking of what the average listener would be thinking right now. I'm thinking, okay, well, come on, Fred, how much money are we talking? Like the story I always tell about this. I used to, when I was a kid, I caddied for the Chicago Mafia. And by the way, back to your question, anybody knows the Jewish Mafia, my main loop was Mickey Mason, who was Meyer Lansky's #1 lieutenant in the Jewish mob. But I also caddied for the Sam Giancana, the Italian Mafia family. And they would play $10,000 hole skins games back in the 60s. And if you couldn't write the check for $60,000 at the end, you can imagine what happened. That was pressure.
That's pressure.
So are we talking about a $5 NASA in your case, or what? What kind of money are we talking about?
Yeah. Oh, $5?
Only $5.
I mean, okay. When I'm playing with people that are, because the guys that I play with, we don't gamble. And I think a couple months ago, my friend Neil, who I play with, like, okay, here's what we're going to do in this game. And I ended up winning our 3 rounds But I was a wreck, and my index went up 3 points after that. I was just so messed up by the whole thing. It just throws me.
So it's not the money; it's the loss, right?
It's the pressure.
Yeah,
it's having it count. And again, I've never played competitive sports, so I never was trained in that. You know, like my younger son was a high school wrestler. He knows what it takes, and he can get in my head faster than anybody because he will not play golf now without gambling. And by the way, and I told that story about my son playing golf and he turning me onto it. He quit soon after that. He didn't play much longer after that. But now, as an adult, he loves the game. And when we go out and play, I'm like, do you want me to make any suggestions? No, I don't want to hear your voice. You know, I can tell you that, you know, you're a really good golfer. You just don't know how to manage your way around a golf. I don't want to hear your voice. No, let's play golf. But he can get into my head like, all right, this one counts. Oh boy. That's probably the worst part of my game. I would absolutely say that. But he loves the game now. He absolutely loves it. And he plays because he's in a business that allows him this. He gets treated to some of the best courses in the country all over the place. Right. All over the country. Goes to Bandon, private jets, regular basis. He asked me the other day, he says, what are the chances you think that I'll get to play Augusta? And I said, less than 1%. He goes, I don't think so. He says, I'm one round away from playing Augusta. I go, what do you mean? He goes, just the right guy. If I play with the right guy and I have the opportunity, will he take his dad? No. No. Hey, it's business. Dad can't do that. Okay, that's fine.
All right, let's talk about the podcast. So tell us some of your favorite episodes or favorite guests and why.
Oh, my favorite guest, Jim Waldron.
Include me in the list. No, get off. No. You're embarrassing me on national internet.
International.
Although nobody can see my face turn red, so it doesn't matter.
Right. I've developed relationships with people that have been amazing. Of course, Tony Manzoni comes to mind, but losing Tony it made it even worse. Love having the guys that I have come back. I just love to hear what they have to say, and I learn so much with great communicators. But and I'm not one on looking for famous people, although I've had people that have Stockton and Hardy, and I've had famous teachers on that I've learned a lot, Lauren Roberts. But I don't, I'd rather talk to their caddies than to the players, because these guys are very cautious about what they say because they've been burned by the media and they get it. So it's like, that's kind of boring, but caddies love telling stories.
Yeah, but if you had Lauren Roberts on, you should have taken the advantage of say, how come I fixed my short putts? Because there was about a 10-year period. He was the number one ranked putter in the world.
Here's a weakness on my game in regards to the podcast. Because I started playing golf late in life, I didn't know about the game. I don't know the history of the game. I don't know these players. And it's not like I'm a student of that. I'm a student of playing the game. I'm a student of golf, not golfers, I guess is the way to say that. I don't, know. And I came into it when Tiger was, coming into his own. And Tiger went to Stanford. My older son went to Stanford. So there's that connection. So I could never be a golf fan. My wife, why don't you become a golf announcer? It's like, because I don't know anything about the sport that I can talk knowledgeably about. But go out on a golf course with me, I can be very helpful. I have friends that I've helped based on the things that I learned, but I don't give mechanics lessons. I give mental and strategic lessons, things that I think that I've learned a lot about and really has made me a better golfer. Having a putting green doesn't hurt in my backyard. Working on my short game helps a ton on lowering scores. But I talk about that a lot.
Well, and plus when you know the metrics, the Moneyball approach, which most golfers still don't know. I mean, I'll just tell them real quick. So the two biggest metrics for shooting a lower than average score on any given day for people who are good enough to break 100 all the way up to and including tour pros the number one stat is greens in regulation. So if you normally hit, say, 8 greens in regulation and you get lucky one day and you hit like 12, you're going to shoot a lower score.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And then the second, and by the way, part
Giving
of that
yourself a
is,
chance for birdies, right?
Yeah. So part of that is also tee shot, because you're likely to hit the green. You're only likely to hit the green in regulation if your drive was on the par 4 or par 5 was performed reasonably well. So basically, we just call that the ball striking stat. So the ball striking is the greatest predictor of a lower than average score. But the second biggest metric is super short putts of around 6 to 8 feet or less. You got to be good at that skill in golf to score well. Which is what you were saying earlier is your weakness. So just, you can practice that in the living room carpet every night. You can practice, like my dad was if you had to handicap his putting, he was probably a +4, +5 handicap at putting.
Wow. His
actual index, I think he never got lower than 11 or 12, but he loved to putt, and he would practice every night on the living room carpet. And he was as good as a tour pro at putting.
Wow.
So it just takes practice to get good at.
Yeah. So as far as, favorite shows, I love these stories that I come across occasionally that we get to do, like playing golf with the blind golfer. The guy in his 60s who ended up playing college golf.
And he was blind?
No, different stories. I mean, I had a listener reach out to me. He said, "Would you like to play golf? I'm sightless." And it's like, yeah, absolutely. So I did a video and a podcast episode on that. People that tell stories, talking to authors about their books, like talking to Mark Frost about The Match, one of my all-time favorite.
That's a great book.
Yeah, and people who have great, crazy stories. J.J. Resnick, just recently, when J.J. tells a story of he played for Tony Manzoni at College of the Desert, became Gerald Ford's caddy. And telling stories like that. Those are the kinds of stories that I absolutely love. But I just love learning about this stuff from people who are knowledgeable and getting insights, meeting people who've started companies. I like the small, obviously, if you've been listening, you know for a while that I like the small companies, the startups, the entrepreneurs who are struggling to get into golf. But, when you're competing against these multinational corporations that have a tremendous amount of money for advertising and can pay players to put their names out on these golf tournaments, it's a real struggle. But I love that kind of struggle because that's the kind of guy I am.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what do you see the future with the podcast? So do you have any major sort of changes planned in the works, or what's going to happen, say, in the next 5 years?
It seems to me that the most interest in shows, and that's basically, like how many downloads we get. That's the only way we can measure how good we're doing. When we talk about mental game, that always seems to get the highest number, and maybe it's just in the title or something. But yeah, the mental game and core strategy. And that's the feedback I get from listeners is that when you talk about that kind of stuff, I learned so much that I never knew. So many people tell me that I never knew anything about the mental game. I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that you can do that. And I love hearing that kind of feedback.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. And that seems to be the trend, as you know, in my own practice with the yips, specializing in the yips and mental game.
Yep.
Although I teach other parts as well. But we've seen a big shift. Right before the pandemic hit, I started seeing a big shift where I would get new students who had never taken a mental game lesson ever. And these guys have been playing for sometimes 20, 30, 40 years. And a lot of them were good players, but never took a mental game lesson. And all of a sudden they're reaching out. I think I got some major weaknesses in my mental game. Can you help? That kind of thing.
Awesome.
That's new. That's new in golf. Even though forever everybody said, golf's 100% mental. It's the 6 inches between your ears, like Bobby Jones famously said. But they pay lip service to that. But then when you ask them, well, what are you working on? Well, I'm working on externally rotating my right elbow 12 degrees on transition. Really? You think that's going to help you more than working on your mental game? But that's the bias, as you know, in traditional golf teaching. It's all mechanics 24/7. So
right.
Yeah, I agree with that. The mental game is the new cutting edge in golf instruction. You're going to see it starting to get more and more popular in the next decade. The new mental game for sure.
You know, talking about that with Bobby Jones, this is classic. I got an email this past week, from Bobby Jones' grandson, Bob Jones the Fourth. And he's kidding. Like, I don't know how I've missed what your podcast is, but I'm a psychologist and a golf historian. Would you like to have a conversation with me? I'm like, are you kidding? Of course I would. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have.
I would love, well, that would be, I'm going to listen to that one for sure. But,
and if any listeners, and this is the thing, because my a lot of these interviews I do are last minute, I would love to be able to say, coming up, I'm going to be doing an interview with so-and-so. Maybe I should use Twitter more for that. But it's like, if you have questions for these people, I would love for the audience to submit questions to these people as well. So if you have any questions about Bobby Jones, or golf history, and this guy I'll ask him. That would be amazing.
Well, it's so funny. You mentioned that because I was literally talking to a new Yip student literally yesterday. And this came up, and somehow I mentioned something about Bobby Jones in the mental game. He goes, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Well, he famously said that," which I'm sure his grandson will tell you. He said that there is absolutely no relationship whatsoever between tournament golf and recreational golf. They're two completely different games. Now, one reason he said that is he had such severe anxiety, even though he was the number one player in the world. He never played without severe anxiety, to the point where he actually had a nervous breakdown when he was 28 and was hospitalized for it, and never played another competitive round again.
That's
Did
amazing.
You know that?
No, I had no idea.
Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
No, all those majors and tournaments he won, he had severe diarrhea before the round. He had butterflies in his stomach. His tongue would stick to the roof of his mouth. He had all the classic signs of severe anxiety, and yet he still performed at a high level, that's sort of an interesting topic. That it's possible to perform well even when you're very nervous.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, he literally retired when he was 28. If he had kept playing, he would have won a lot more majors for sure, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And of course, when I told my son, he goes, "Can he get me onto Augusta?"
Yeah, you think? You probably could. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Oh man. All right, man. So I think I've run out of questions. Do you have any
think
for
we've
me?
run out of. I think that we're the only two left on this show. No one else is here. I've talked way too much about myself, and I really appreciate you doing this, and I know you and I we're doing this over the phone because we've struggled with technology together, and I've tried really hard to help you. We spent a couple of hours last week trying to get you on.
At least.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but for some reason,
it's my bad juju.
No, it's not.
I'm a Luddite, and I'm proud of it. And I actually break computers by just walking into the room. My best buddy, my former college roommate, we're still best friends. He says, "You've broken 3 of my computers in the last 25 years.
There you go.
Just by walking in the room. So
see, there's a mental game that goes with computers, Jim, and we're going to have to help you on that. We're going to get you a coach.
By the way, I was thinking about something earlier when you were telling me the Koufax story, because I've got a big, huge poster of the dude from The Big Lebowski sitting on the toilet in one of the opening scenes.
Yeah.
That one of my longtime students and friends sent me years ago. But I was thinking about the great line that Walter Sobchak says in the movie about he doesn't want to do anything on Sabbath, on Shabbos. And he says to the dude, I don't roll on Shabbos, dude.
I have the T-shirt.
And the dude says, "You're not even Jewish."
Jim, I have the T-shirt that says, "I don't roll on Shabbos."
You actually have that? Oh, that's
I actually
hilarious.
have that T-shirt.
Yeah.
Jim, you, I don't know what it is about your luck, but you're right. This didn't record.
What do you mean?
I'm kidding.
Oh, thank God. You freaked me out there for a second. Holy crap.
Jim, thank you so much for doing this. And, we were just going to do it with Maddie B, and that would have been silly the whole time. But our relationship is such that we could talk about a lot of different things. And I can't wait to have you back on the show so I can ask you more questions about how we can become better golfers. Thank you so much for all your support and cooperation the entire time we've been doing this. And I look forward to doing more. And As we depart here, there's one more congratulations I want to give, and it's a tease to next week's episode. Jim, thanks again.
Talk soon.
Hey, Fred, Jim Vanettis here. Congratulations on 800 episodes. You know, it's a great thing that you do for golfers and for the game. The only thing I think that could be better than your 800th episode is your 801st. Keep up the great work.